Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, I won. I've ensured, Israel's, its safety is protected. The Iranian nuclear weapons program is destroyed. The existential threat to Israel has been removed. Khamenei says, look, I have won. I did not bow to anyone. The regime still stands in that sense. Donald Trump, give me the Nobel Prize already. I ended a conflict. So everyone's won. Yeah, once again. I mean, after all, he's been ending conflicts since, left, right, and center. 6 months, right? Conflict after conflict. Netanyahu has got what he wanted. He started off by fighting a war of attrition. And, that is a very, very bold decision to take. When a politician decides to fight a war of attrition, there are no quick wins in a war of attrition. It goes on for months and years. You possibly won't even see a victory. I'm not at Trump's beck and call. I'm the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm the longest Prime Minister of Israel, 17 years. I do what I please. So that could also be the case. And with Khamenei also trying to make a point that, look, we still have a lot more missiles. There's more from, where that came from. So that both sides are, scoring political points.
Another conflict, another ceasefire, both of them involving the US. After what the US President Donald Trump has come to calling it, the 12-day war, Israel and Iran have finally stopped bombing each other, agreeing to a ceasefire brokered by the US. But the question is, what was the outcome of this 12-day war? It began obviously with Israel launching strikes on Iran. Iran countered, and then the US around on the day 10th entered the picture by bombing Iran's nuclear sites. What has this achieved, and who's come out to be the winner? For that, we have Sandeep Unnithan. Hey Sandeep, how are you?
Good, Dave. Good to be back.
Yeah.
Another conflict.
The conflict, yeah. Sandeep, if I were to look at the two ceasefires that are the closest to us, one the most recent, India and Pakistan, and the other, India and China, though I don't think you can call that a ceasefire per se, because no physical fighting happened apart from the Galwan clash, but it was still something close to that.
Right.
And what I've noticed in both those agreements between those two countries is that the agreements gave both the countries something to sell their people, something which would make them tell people that, hey, we won this conflict, we won this round of war, or whatever you want to call it. And that gives me an understanding that any ceasefire, when it's negotiated, at the end of the day, you have to give something for everyone to, for them to be able to say, hey, we've come out
the off-ramp.
The off-ramp, yeah.
Right.
So do you think that's happened in this case? And can we really and practically say that, ultimately all the three parties involved, Netanyahu, Trump, and Iran and Khamenei, have come out to be?
Oh, absolutely, Dave. But with a few subtle differences. Now, this was no ordinary conflict, right? Conflict of the kind that we've seen in the past, where you have one country being physically invaded by another country, and a regime change taking place. One of the last such occurrences was in 2003, where you had Saddam Hussein dethroned by the US-led coalition. Now, that was a substantial US-led force of more than 160,000 soldiers who went there, physically defeated Saddam's armies, and then installed a government of their choice. But here, it's a very different kind of a conflict. It's not a conventional war. It would be like a special military operation, to use what Putin has been describing the Russia-Ukraine war, though that is a full-on land conflict. Here, there's no land element to that conflict. So it's very, it's an kind of an amorphous conflict. How do you define, victory and loss in a conflict where both the parties are over 1,000 kilometers apart, right? So you have the Israeli Air Force launching jets at Iran. They've got full airspace. They control all the airspace over Iran. They're attacking targets in Iran. You have Iran that's launching hundreds of ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles at Israel over 1,000 kilometers away. So who would win in a conflict like this when there are no physical armies in contact or capturing territory, which is your traditional parameters of understanding conflict. But the larger point is that, like you mentioned, every side has an off-ramp and everyone's pronounced victory. Benjamin Netanyahu, he said, I won. I've ensured, Israel's, its safety is protected. The Iranian nuclear weapons program is destroyed. The existential threat to Israel has been removed. Khamenei says, look, I've won. I did not bow to anyone. The regime still stands in that sense. Donald Trump, give me the Nobel Prize already. I ended a conflict. So everyone's won. Yeah, once again. I mean, after all, he's been ending conflicts since,
left, right, and center. Yeah.
Yeah, left, right, and center. 6 months, right? Conflict after conflict. No one's listening to Trump, but that's a different story. No, but the thing is here, you have to see when you look at the state of both countries when they entered the conflict, that is 7th of October
Yes.
2023, vis-a-vis today, June 2025. 20 months later, where does Israel stand? Where does Iran stand? Now, if you look at it, Iran on the 6th of October was a regional superpower. It had a ring of proxies around Israel, surrounded Israel, very strong army, ballistic missile force, all of that, under a lot of sanctions, economic pressure, and all that. But it still had a formidable military machine. And this axis that it had created, all the way from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea, which we've discussed in previous discussions. Now, Israel, on the other hand, was facing a lot of pressure on its borders. It had Hafiz al-Assad, Bashar al-Assad in Syria. It had this wave of Iranian proxies around it. Hezbollah, one of the not one of the world's most powerful non-state actor right there. But today, 20 months later, look at the map, how it stands. Iran is lonely, isolated. It's been bombed literally to smithereens. Its nuclear facilities are a smoking ruin. You can argue about whether it's been set back by months or years or decades, the nuclear program, but that is definitely not, they're not getting a bomb anytime soon, right? They're non-state actors are completely in disarray. Hezbollah has been vanquished as a military threat. Assad, the house of Assad has collapsed. They've
Gone.
He's
Vanished.
gone. He's vanished. He's sitting in Moscow, right? So the whole geopolitics has shifted in favor of Israel.
Yeah.
Right. Israel is in the driver's seat. So on those parameters, I would give Netanyahu the maximum number of points. He's the winner actually in this conflict. If you look at it, you may say that, well, he's killed so many civilians, there's been collateral, and he's been fighting. The Israeli economy has suffered, and people aren't building anything in Israel, and there's been missile attacks. But at the end of the day, Netanyahu has got what he wanted. He started off by fighting a war of attrition. And, that is a very, very bold decision to take when a politician decides to fight a war of attrition. There are no quick wins in a war of attrition. It goes on for months and years.
Yes.
You possibly won't even see a victory. Like, the kind that Putin started with Ukraine, the special military operation. It's entering its 5th year now, very shortly, in a few months. So these are enormous political gambles that only politicians can take. Netanyahu took that call. Prime Minister Modi took that call when he launched those attacks on Pakistan, nuclear armed Pakistan. That's a red line that he crossed. So I would give it fair and square to Netanyahu.
Yeah. Couple of points more on this. And now I want to talk about the ceasefire itself and more about the logistical and practical aspect of implementing it. Because what we've seen, the last time we had something similar, India-Pakistan, cessation of hostilities, not exactly ceasefire.
Right.
You had Pakistan sort of, again, launching drone attacks again the same very night, right? And even over here, once you had Trump being Trump, announcing a ceasefire on Truth Social, of all places, then you had Iran launching missiles towards Israel, Israel apparently launching jets to bomb Iran, and then Trump again posting on Truth Social that, hey, Israel, you better bring those jets back.
Right.
So when a ceasefire is agreed to, decided, what's the practical aspect of implementing it, and why do you think you often have cases where it takes maybe a day or a few hours for it to actually come into
It's very
force?
simple. It's just, militaries advise the politicians. And in this case, both militaries seem to have advised their respective leaders that we still need to do this. We need to carry out these attacks. We need to make a point here. So there were certain objectives that had to be met, military objectives that had to be met, and they did that. And after that, it was, a ceasefire. Or it could well have been a political decision where Netanyahu said, well, Trump thinks he can get me to shut up. I'm not going to stop bombing. Let him say whatever he wants to, So that could also, it be a combination of both as well, right? There could be a military objective, but also political signaling. I'm not at Trump's beck and call. I'm the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm the longest served Prime Minister of Israel, 17 years. I do what I please. So that could also be the case. And with Khamenei also trying to make a point that, look, we still have a lot more missiles. There's more from where that came from. So that both sides are scoring political points. So I think this is also the nature of warfare, how it's changed. And I think the most important thing here is Dave, that Operation Sindoor taught us that you traditionally looked at warfare in 5 domains:
Yeah.
land, sea, air, cyber, space. Now, in this year, in 2 conflicts, Sindoor and Rising Lion, you've seen a 6th dimension, which is the narrative war.
Yes.
That's a very important thing in this era of social media. Everybody has a smartphone. Everyone's a journalist. Everyone's a consumer of news. Everyone is a participant in the news as well. People shape opinions online. So all of that adds to this entire narrative cloud that is kind of expanding, and it's very important. So decision makers, politicians, military leaders, commanders will have to take this very seriously.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we'll end it there. Very quick take on what's happened between Israel and Iran over the last 12 days. That I think, like Donald Trump is saying, the 12-day war.
It's a 12-day war. Exactly.
Thanks, Sandeep. Thanks so much.
Great to be here, Dave.
Thank you.
Thanks.